Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to SC Dawa Live. We are covering the topic, is atheism rational? And what better panel to discuss it with than Imran, Hamza, and a guy in a car. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
MashaAllah. So the first thing I'm going to say is, that is an extraordinary looking beard. Where did you buy it?
Who are you talking to?
Okay, I was talking to Mr. Hijab here. How are you, Mr. Hijab?
Yeah, not bad. How are you doing?
MashaAllah. You know, some people have been saying, is Hijab okay? He's been staying in his car. So today what we're going to be discussing is atheism rational? Okay? So, before I start off into this topic, I want everybody to just give their quick 2 cents on this idea. Is atheism rational? And we'll start with down there.
Me? Yeah. All right, great. Okay, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Subboor, Imran, Hijab. Is atheism irrational? Atheism is irrational because it rejects a claim that is a representation of the actual state of affairs. Full stop. So what is the claim? The claim is that there is a creator for everything that exists, and that creator is worthy of worship. This statement is a representation of the actual state of affairs of reality, and it can be justified. Atheism rejects that, therefore atheism is irrational. That's the first point. Very quickly, second point is atheism is irrational if and only if those atheists that reject such a claim adopt philosophical naturalism, in particular the Darwinian mechanism to explain our rational faculties, because, and this is a long discussion maybe we can have later, because that would lead to what I call skepticism, because they do not have a basis to justify the rational faculties. In technical language, that they have truth reliable cognitive faculties that can produce true beliefs. They can't really justify it under the current understanding of the Darwinian mechanism and philosophy and all of these other things. So yeah, atheism is irrational.
Nice. Jazakallah khair for that summary. And Hijab's just left us, so we can't really speak to him anymore. So just before we go over to Imran, a question which I completely forgot to actually explain is all of us on this live call, including Mr. Hijab, who may be getting a parking ticket, not sure why he jumped off. All of us were actually part of a new initiative, which Hamza was going to actually explain.
Yes, so we haven't launched it yet. We're going to launch it in July, but basically we are forming an institute called Sapience Institute. Sapience coming from the word, well, it basically means wisdom, deep knowledge, insight, and it's inspired by the Quran in Surah Yusuf, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala basically talks about that I think it was Yusuf alayhi salam, that he calls to Allah with basira, with deep insight, with wisdom. And the main focus of this institute is to create leaders, create intellectual and academic activists to defend and share Islam compassionately and intelligently. So watch this space. It's exciting times. And yeah, and we're going to be working with lots of different people as well. And inshallah, we pray it's going to have lots of barakah. He's back.
Jazakallah khair. So it's nothing to do with the Homo sapiens, Homo erectus, nothing like that. It's just to do with wisdom and...
Yeah, sapiens, not sapiens. Although they share similar meanings, I believe, because sapiens means the rational animal, right?
Wise, yes, indeed. So, Imran, Assalamu alaikum, how are you?
Walaikum assalam. Good, bro. How are you?
So just to warm us up on this topic, give us a few thoughts about this idea that, you know, atheists are rational, skeptics, brights, intelligent people who are always in tune with reason and rationality and all of this. How do you feel about that narrative?
I feel it's wrong, to be very honest. That's how I feel. Taking a slightly different angle from Hamza.
Is it as wrong as Hijab doing product placement in the middle of a live appeal?
Well, possibly, yeah. Possibly as wrong as that. But look, I taking a different angle, and as soon as you turn away from God and you deny God, and you say, therefore, you acknowledge that everything is a result of just chance, blind, cold, physical processes, straight away you can't make sense of anything. You can't make sense of your truth-bearing rational faculties, as Hamza said. You can't make sense of morality. You can't make sense of meaning, value, any of these things. All of it goes out the window. So a worldview that puts you in a position as a human being where you have to reject those fundamental truths, those things you know to be true, and you can't account for them anymore. Such a worldview can't be rational. It just doesn't make any sense.
Absolutely. And coming to Hijab, who's decided to, okay, you're back to the landscape mode. Hijab, is atheism rational? We get this narrative that, look, we're bright, we're intelligent, we know what we're doing. Religion's irrational, religion's, backwards. How do you feel about that narrative?
I think if we say religion is backwards, we need to know what's forward first. I mean, backwards and whenever someone uses that kind of language, backwards and so on.
Yep.
They usually have a preconceived moral application. So usually it's kind of like post-enlightenment ideas. So or something like that. But anyway, on the question itself, I mean, is atheism rational? Atheism is a lack of belief in a deity, right? So it's that's the definition of atheism. It's a lack of belief in a higher power, in a deity, and so on. So it's obviously distinguished from classical theism. It's distinguished from deism. It's distinguished from polytheism. It's distinguished from monotheism.
Yeah.
So if we put all of those models like monotheism, polytheism, pantheism, classical theism, and deism, all of those as ways in which we try to understand reality. Yeah, and we say atheism is one of those ways. So what explanatory power does atheism have?
Yeah,
that's my question, because for it to be rational, it would have to have some kind of explanatory power.
Yes.
Or it has to have some kind of refuting power with all of the other models.
Yeah.
So either has to one of those two things. Either it categorically refutes all of the other models, or it itself explains something in a better way than all of the other models.
Sure.
And so I don't see how anyone can argue that atheism, which is not anything, because atheism isn't a belief, really. It's a lack of belief.
Sure.
So how can with that lack of belief, what can you explain with that?
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah. So that's my question. My question is, what can you explain with it? Had a debate one time.
Sorry, Hijab. We've already got some guests, and as you know, we just lost a guest. Our narrative and the narrative that you've championed and others have championed is not just about doing some armchair philosophizing, but actually going out there and engaging atheists. So on the show, we are inviting atheists, agnostics. They can come onto the show and we can speak to them. The name, the Subboor and Khidr. If you guys are Muslim, I'm going to then ask you to go to the back of the queue. So I'm going to check with the admin if you guys are, because we're supposed to be only letting...
Can I just clarify something that Hijab said?
Yes.
Just to be a little bit fair to the atheists, an atheist can...
Okay, Hamza, sorry, 1 second. We just lost an atheist guest. Another one joined. Stops S. Can I ask the admin to please unmute them, and then Hamza can carry on speaking to them, inshallah. Stops S. Mr. Ask Yourself. Welcome. Ask Yourself is an atheist YouTuber who actually did a refutation on cosmic skeptic. And I think that was a very good refutation. I'm guessing today he's going to be speaking about something quite different. So how are you doing, Ask Yourself?
Oh, I'm doing well, although your voice got quiet at the end there. I heard the bit about cosmic. Am I coming through loud and clear?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. So just ask your question, Ask Yourself.
Well, I guess that if you're saying atheism's irrational, I take it that that means that there's some kind of like logical contradiction entailed by like, well, I mean, I'm an agnostic, but by atheism. So I'm just wondering, like, do you actually take the view that I've got some kind of contradiction in my position in virtue of being agnostic?
Good question. Good question. I haven't heard that.
And I feel a bit weird starting off so formally because we talked a bit previously about Cosmic's video. So yeah, it's nice to speak to you in person.
Same here. And that refutation that you did of Cosmic's view in terms of it still entailing some sort of relativism or subjectivism is something we'll definitely plug in the description for people to watch. So Hamza, would you like to address the question that Ask Yourself is asking?
Yeah, so when I say that atheism is irrational, it is only in as much as someone would reject a claim that is true that can be justified. So that's what I'm saying. So I would even slightly disagree with Hijab's take on the whole atheism issue because, you know, atheism may not have any explanatory power because it doesn't claim to have explanatory power, but it may be, for example, in a hypothetical scenario, their most rational position because the current claims for a deity or for a creator could be not in line with logic, or they could be irrational. So by virtue of that, they say, well, given the fact that there are no good arguments for that claim, we will stay silent and we will believe that the default position is one of silence, for example, or one of that a creator doesn't exist. So it's not always the case that something it doesn't have explanatory power, that it lacks rational force per se. Although I disagree with that hypothetical scenario anyway, but I just wanted to add that just to be a little bit more nuanced. So yeah, so just coming back to the Ask Yourself's point, atheism is irrational if atheism rejects a claim, which in the case of Muslim theists is the claim that a creator exists, that he's worthy of worship, and that claim can be justified. So from that perspective, given the fact that that is not only an intuitive claim, it's natural, it makes sense, it's rational, and it can be justified, rejecting that claim is irrational. So that's why I'm making the claim that atheists are rational by virtue of the fact of them rejecting something that is a representation of the actual state of affairs.
Excellent.
Okay.
Just a quick thing. Ask Yourself, I'm going to give you a chance to respond to that.
Sure.
And then we're going to move on to Lance simply because our studio's full. But I definitely want to have your Darwinian delusions as a separate one-to-one live. And
can I add one point? Sorry, before Lance. Before Ask Yourself.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to ask the admin to keep not Lance, Ask Yourself on longer because of Hijab's response.
Right. Just a quick point on the actual question you asked about agnosticism and whether there's a contradictory postulation there and saying, and I think there is one. I think there is a contradiction there, and I'll tell you what the contradiction is. Sure. The contradiction is when you say I don't know, right? You're making a knowledge claim. So actually, your claim. So your claim not to know, you must know that you don't know. I think this is one of the things that agnostics almost always try and squeeze themselves out of the discourse by being on the fence. But I don't actually think that by saying I don't know, that absolves you of anything, because by saying I don't know, you're effectively saying I know that I don't know, because you have to know that you don't know. You can either know you don't know or know you know. So you know that you don't know. And if you know that you don't know, there is going to be a tension there between the presupposition and the actual claim itself.
Yeah.
Can I get a reply in, or you guys got to move to the next person?
No. Ask Yourself. You got a few minutes if you want to reply to both of them.
Okay. Well, I mean, I can go forever on this topic, so you tell me when you want me to hop off. So
you can wrap it up in about 3 minutes. Your response to both of them, please.
Oh, I don't think I'll need that long. So firstly, just to clarify terms, we're all using these words in the same way, right? Atheist is someone who actually thinks the proposition God exists is false. Agnostic is someone who's just not sure if it's true or false. We're using those in the same way?
I wouldn't say that, because atheism, vernacularly speaking, is defined usually as a lack of belief in the deity. So it's not necessarily that you think is false. It's just that you have a lacking of belief in it.
Okay, I can work with that. That's fine. I just want to make sure there wasn't confusion, because I was using the word a bit differently. By your definition, I would be an atheist. So just to reply to what you said, so first of all, I could just be stating a belief claim, right? Like, I don't know what you take knowledge to be. Maybe you take it to be justified true belief, but I'm just stating my belief, right? My belief is that I don't know.
Okay.
Right. So if the contradiction is meant to be that I'm making a knowledge claim and I'm claiming I'm claiming not to have knowledge, right? So there's actually two problems there. One is that I'm making a belief claim, not a knowledge claim. So that kind of like shoots that in the foot. But then the other is that making a knowledge claim in one domain, saying I know that I'm not sure about this, it doesn't entail that, you know, I don't know anything at all, right? I might know something else, but just not know a particular thing. Yeah, just deal with the first one though. Assume I'm just making a belief claim.
Then you should say I don't believe. No,
sure,
I don't know.
Okay, I believe that I don't know.
Okay, but that's still a knowledge claim.
Well, I think it's a belief claim. It starts with I believe that.
But why can't it be both?
It probably depends how you define knowledge. But what I just want to understand is like what exact propositions do you think make up the contradiction here?
Yeah. So like I said to you before, when I say, for example, I know or I don't know, yeah.
Well,
so I have to. So, for example, if you ask
can I just clarify one thing? Just
yeah.
I want it to be specific. My claim is I am uncertain if a God exists. That's the exact claim. I just want to understand where the contradiction is there.
Okay, so the agnostic, if you define agnosticism, okay, how would you define agnosticism?
Uncertainty about the truth value of the proposition God exists.
Okay, so you must know that you're uncertain.
I believe that I'm uncertain.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. That's so. If you believe you're uncertain, okay, so you're certain of your uncertainty.
Do all beliefs require certainty?
Well, if you're making the claim, right? I'm uncertain of X.
Sorry, I don't mean to push. Could you answer that though? Do all beliefs require uncertainty or certainty? Because you're saying I'm certain in virtue of the fact that I believe, right? But I don't think you actually hold the position that a belief entails certainty, right?
How certain are you that you're not certain?
Well, I don't know if I could put a number on it. I'm just not certain.
Okay, but you're certain that you're not certain.
No, I just believe that I'm not certain.
But are you sure about that?
I believe it. I'm not going to say that I've got certainty if that's what you're trying to get me to say.
No, but here's the thing. This is the point. If you believe you're not certain, then your belief is one of uncertainty. Basically, you can rephrase it like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I am. What I would say is that I am uncertain if the proposition God exists is true or false.
Yeah, fine. So that is your belief.
Mm-hmm.
So that's your claim. Your claim is so. The problem is when you say I believe that I'm uncertain. So you do have belief, okay?
Sure.
Yeah. So your belief is that of uncertainty.
Mm-hmm. And that's not a certain belief, right? It's just a belief.
Yeah. So in that case, you do have some belief.
Correct.
You do have some certainty, but it's just it's just designated to uncertainty that you have certainty. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So it's still a knowledge thing.
Hijab. So ask yourself. I definitely you're on my Facebook, so I'm going to message you again.
Sure.
It's only that Lance has been waiting a little while.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm going to have you again, and thank you so much for reaching out to me a few weeks ago on Twitter and Facebook, whatever it was. So
absolutely, thanks for having me on.
Cheers.
Nice to talk to you guys. Okay, keep well.
Thank you.
Hey.
Yeah, sorry. I think this whole question gets a bit messy because I think what's the guy's name? Ask yourself.
Yourself, yeah.
He was referring to how do you define knowledge, and that is a massive debate in the theory of knowledge. If you go down that route, it opens cans of philosophical worms that you may not be able to put back in the can, and
Right.
I don't think it's very healthy. So I think when someone says I believe that I'm uncertain, they're basically saying I don't know either way about the proposition that God exists, and I think we should just take it from there and move forward. It's a little different from what Hijab is saying, and I do agree with Hijab. If someone's a kind of a philosophical skeptic, like for example, Sectus Empiricus, when he says, there is no knowledge, well, that claim itself, it can be seen maybe as a knowledge.
So I want Lance to come in because I've held him on for a long time. Really sorry about this, Lance. Hi.
Can I be heard?
Yes.
How's it going, guys?
You can hear
Awesome.
you clearly,
Perfect. Yeah, so just to pick up on my thoughts of the last conversation, I think that Mr. Hijab is equivocating between knowledge and certainty. A lot of times, colloquially, people say that, I know this when they mean to say that they're very confident in a belief. But when people talk about knowledge in the philosophical sense, they usually mean something like reliably produced true belief or justified true belief.
Yes.
Very common. And then there's stuff like Gettier cases, which complicate things a bit more. But generally, just to simplify things, we're talking about justified beliefs. Now, I have some notes that I've taken from the three of you gentlemen that have spoken. I might have misattributed one quote to someone else, but it seems so far from what I've heard that Mr. Sortsius and Mr. Imran kind of have a more traditional approach to the way that they view atheism, just kind of as a denial or rejection of the belief of God claims. Not even just the rejection, but also the statement that gods don't exist. And Mr. Hijab has a more, I guess, more modern or more new atheist type of approach to it. But also his response to it is a bit more, I guess, I don't know if aggressive is the right word, but kind of like uncharitable in the sense that the conversation kind of gets bogged down about epistemology. That's just my sense of it. But so if I were to just go into a couple of things that I've seen said, somebody, let's see, Mr. Hijab said that atheism is a lack of belief, and that if atheism is to be rational, it has to have some explanatory power or refutational power. And to my view, something that has an explanatory power, explanatory scope, is something that more fits into the scientific purview. And it turns out that a lot of atheists are firm reliers on science. So, I mean, that's no wonder that there seems to be some mixing up of atheism and science itself. But just having the view of general skepticism of religious claims and challenging religious claims, I think Mr. Sortsius said that atheism is irrational because it rejects the true state of affairs, namely that God exists. But I don't see that that makes it irrational at all. I mean, I could entertain that it's true that a God exists, and yet atheism could be perfectly rational in the reasons that someone were to be an atheist. For example, somebody that had rational beliefs that informed their rational evidences that inform their beliefs, and yet still the fact of the matter is that they happen to be mistaken somewhere along the line. And I mean, it gets more into the conversation of what is the evidence for the God claim itself, what is the support for that. And I've heard a number of supports for the God claim, and to me, after investigating them, they all seem to fall up short after philosophical investigation and scrutiny on both sides as well. I've looked into both of the sides of those types of arguments and claims.
Okay, thank you, Lance, for that question. I want to first go to Imran, then to Hamza, then to Hijab, and then we'll move on to Carlos because we have loads of people waiting. Lance H, please leave behind your email address in the private chat, and we will contact you after this as well for potentially another one-to-one on another channel.
All right, thank you, gents. And if I could just say one other thing, something that I didn't mention, I think it's very important. When you're talking about knowing that you don't know, there's two different kinds of knowledge there. One is internal knowledge, and a philosopher like Bill Grommy says that we have direct access to our internal states as agents. That's necessary and constitutive of being an agent. Whereas knowledge of some kind of external affairs, such as something about reality, synthetic propositions, they're not the same kind of knowledge. Thank you, guys.
Perfect. So, starting with Imran. Imran, perhaps you can speak about the side that Lance was speaking about in terms of the arguments not going either way, and then Hamza and Hijab in terms of epistemology or the other sort of issues they touched upon.
Yeah, so look, it's something I want to mention on this. I think sometimes what happens is we and I'm saying this with utmost respect, we give atheists too much credence from the perspective that we give them that level playing field, that we say that, look, here's an argument for God's existence. Now we acknowledge that they have the ability to analyze and assess what we're saying, and they can account for some basic things that we need to have a discussion, such as truth-bearing rational faculty, something Hamza mentioned earlier. We assume this for them and then have that discussion. My thing is, okay, go straight to the roots. Before we even go into those discussions, and we give arguments for God's existence and allow them to be the judge and pass the judgment as to whether they agree or disagree, assuming that they can also account for truth-bearing rational faculties. Before we even get there, we need to first see, okay, are they really a judge? Do they hold that position? Does their outlook on life, call it a worldview, call it a perspective, whatever you want to call it a lack of belief, understanding that as soon as you say that there is no God, there is no creator, that has implications, whatever you want to label it or call it, understanding that on such a position, when you really go to the foundations, you can't make sense of certain fundamental things that you need to have even a discussion in the first place. That's where I want to start the discussion, is that can you make sense of those things you're taking for granted, right? Such as truth-bearing rational faculties, such as accounting for some even more fundamental things such as meaning, right? The very thing that drives us as human beings, even to have a discussion in the first place.
Yeah.
To have a discussion as an atheist and a Muslim, you have to have an underlying acknowledgement of meaning, that there's meaning behind what you're doing. My point is that you can't even make sense of these things in the absence of God.
Thank you. So thank you for that, Imran. Sorry, I was sort of speeding you up a bit. Because we have a lot of people in the studio, I'm going to limit it to about a minute and a half to Hamza, a minute and a half to Hijab to respond to. I hope they've not forgotten what the questions or the comments actually were. So Hamza first.
What do you want me to respond to?
So in terms of you speaking about epistemology, and he was touching upon some of the that hijab is confusing, say, certainty with let me get it right. He's equivocating knowledge with certainty, and
yeah, if you take the kind of a philosophical position on knowledge, which is about true justified beliefs, then if you open that kind of worms, and the gentleman mentioned the gatekeeper problems, which they still haven't solved in philosophy about what constitutes knowledge, that opens a can of worms. I don't think that's probably the best discussion, the best avenue, or the best path to walk on in having a discussion with atheists and theists, because it just opens a huge philosophical can of worms. If anyone has studied the theory of knowledge and true justified beliefs and the gatekeeper problems and all of these issues, it just opens a huge can of worms. I'm more siding towards Imran Saab, his kind of outlook, which I think is true, because I think we have to take on a case-by-case basis, because I don't think you can otherize atheists from that point of view, because an atheist is an atheist for their own particular reasons or no reasons, right? And I think, when you start having a one-to-one conversation with them, they may be an atheist because they're currently not convinced with the current evidence. Another atheist may be an atheist because they may think they have a knowledge claim against the claim that God exists. Rather, they have positive knowledge that God doesn't exist. And another atheist, he could just be what I call a sociological atheist or social atheist, an atheist just because it's just part of the social construct, the way they were brought up. It could be for any of those reasons. So depending on what kind of person you talk to, you may have to have a different type of discussion. But generally speaking, I would start with the kind of approach that says, look, if you're an atheist that adopts philosophical naturalism, that everything can be explained by physical processes or phenomena, and there is no divine, there is no supernatural, then that has certain implications. You cannot, for example, that undermines truth as a moral value. Yeah, we could go into that. That undermines you having truth, truth reliable cognitive faculties that can produce true beliefs, right? It undermines, for example, our sense of meaning. It undermines so many different things. So that's the discussion. So from the beginning, if you do adopt philosophical naturalism, then there are huge implications that we need to deal with concerning truth as a moral value, concerning your truth reliable cognitive faculties, concerning meaning, concerning morality, our sense of objective morality. There is even if one or two things that are objectively true, that they're outside them, they're mind independent. There are moral values that are outside of a limited mind and limited emotions, right? How can you ground that in philosophical naturalism? Massive problem. So when it comes to morality, when it comes to rationality, when it comes to truth, when it comes to our truth-bearing rational faculties, truth-reliable cognitive faculties, all of these things that make us human are totally fundamentally undermined by philosophical naturalism, in my view. So I think that's the position, which is a more fruitful position, because if you go to the other route, which you can go to that route, it gets so messy. It gets very messy. You open a can of worms.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I hope, Hijab, you haven't forgotten. I mean, I've actually forgotten some of the points he was making.
No, I remember. But can I just take us back to some definitional issues? Because one of the key points that Ask Yourself, I think his name was, mentioned, which I think needs to be challenged here, is our definition of rationality. Okay, because we have to think about what our definitions are. So in the dictionary, rationality is that which pertains to logic or reason. That's what you'd find in a dictionary definition in Cambridge or Oxford, whatever. Now, if you go and find out what reason is something which it has explanatory power, something which explains or justifies, as far as I remember from the dictionary definition. So if we're using the English language, okay, and we're using these words, we need to be speaking about the same thing, because I think it's a lot of word games when I speak to atheists, with all due respect. You know, we're using the English language. So we have definitions, we have dictionary definitions, we have academic and terminological definitions. When we say reason, go to the dictionary and write down the word reason. You'll find out 3 words stick out: cause, justification, and explanation. Okay, so if you want to call something reasonable, or that which pertains to reason, it needs to provide itself, it needs to provide some explanation, it needs to have some kind of connection with causation or justification. If it doesn't have any of those things, if it's not refutational or explanatory, then it's an empty claim. So you can't claim that atheism is rational if it doesn't have any of those qualities that pertain to reason. If I'm saying it's rational, then it has to have the ability to pertain to reason or logic. But I want to ask the question, the question isn't, is atheism irrational? The question is atheism rational? That's the question, isn't it? So if the question is atheism rational, and rationality is that which pertains to logic and reason has to have some kind of explanation, justification, or causation attached to it, then my question would be, it's not for me to judge, burden of proof is not me no more. I'm asking the question, how is atheism rational? In other words, how does it pertain to reason in so much as it gives us a series of causations that exist, or justifications or explanations? In a nutshell, how does it have explanatory or refutational power, in any way, shape, or form, respective to the other models that are out there? For example, classical theism, deism, monotheism, polytheism, pantheism, and so on. If the question is atheism irrational? It depends on what you mean by atheism, and we can have that discussion. But the question is not this. The question is atheism rational? So the burden of proof is upon the one who's making the claim that it is rational.
Absolutely, Hijab. Thank you very much for that answer. Just before I bring in Carlos, make sure that before you leave us your email address, because we're going to be contacting you all after this live stream. Welcome, Carlos. What is your question?
Hi, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, guys. Good afternoon. Just thank you for having me on, and I love what you're doing. So congratulations to you all. So I'm what you probably consider an atheist, and I believe there is a rational position to take. I've got 3 reasons why, so I'll just run through them quickly. So first of all, for myself, I'm only prepared to believe things about reality that there's sufficient evidence for. So for those things that there are insufficient evidence or no evidence for, myself, I withhold judgment or belief, and I'm happy to say that I don't know or that I cannot know. The second reason is that the God or the creator, however you want to label, is a hypothesis that cannot be demonstrated, in my opinion, or it's not been demonstrated in any way, shape, or form. And therefore, this allows for other possibilities, other hypotheses to be considered when attempting to explain how the universe came into existence. And the third reason is that you cannot demonstrate that our universe is contingent or not contingent. Therefore, I can't see rationally how you can rule out the fact that our universe could be contingent.
Excellent. Carlos, thank you so much for those questions. I've noted them down. Make sure I think you might have left your email. If you haven't, please leave your email in the chat. You have. Thank you so much. Okay, so the first question is about sufficient evidence. The second is about God not being demonstrated. And the third is about you can't demonstrate the universe is actually contingent. And what's very good is we can actually give one part to each person, unless they want to comment on others, and they're more than welcome to on the other parts. So Imran, the first part that Carlos was speaking about was sufficient evidence, right? So he was saying, I don't believe in something unless there is sufficient evidence. What's your response to that in regards to God?
So look, I think it's we need to see this as a very general point applying to our entire lives, right? I want people to think about is the things you believe in your life right now. All of the things, the set of beliefs that you have, the things you acknowledge. Why do you believe those things? Right? Ask yourself that question. And secondly, how much of what you believe is based on what you consider empirical scientific data? Right? And it's a very important point because sometimes we engage on a very rational, philosophical level about these things, but when it comes to real life, it's not applied. So I would guarantee that the most things that we believe in our lives as individuals, whether you're an atheist or a religious person, most of the stuff is not based on empirical data. It's based on other routes to knowledge, right? Sometimes I would even argue much of what we believe in is based on utility as opposed to some sort of direct argument or logical or rational argument for a particular thing. It's intuitive, right? For example, I don't know, some of us have been on diets, right? We don't look at the scientific data behind the diet that leads us to acknowledge that it's the correct diet to follow. We just apply it, see how it works. Is it useful? Fine. We accept it, we acknowledge it, we believe it. Same applies to a lot of things in our lives. Something Hamza mentions about testimony. We believe in our parents being our parents. Most of us that acknowledge this reality haven't had DNA tests. Now, someone may turn around and say, well, you can get a DNA test done. But that's a potential. You haven't spent the entirety of your life believing in your parents based on a potential. You've believed in your parents for other reasons, right? So I think it's important to highlight this because I'm not saying that Carlos was asserting when he said sufficient evidence that he was looking for empirical data, and it would be good to know from him if that's what he was referring to. But in many cases, when atheists ask for evidence, in many cases it is that they are looking for some sort of empirical data to validate the belief in God, etc. And so we need to correct that. It's a very modern phenomena, an occurrence that, especially since the 18th and 19th centuries, where the people have shifted the thinking towards, evidence is what's empirical. Seeing is believing. All of these sort of ideas are embedded within our minds through education, society, etc. And we accept them. We just assume them to be true. But we have to recognize there's many routes to knowledge. And science isn't the only way to truth. And much of what we believe is not based on science. And therefore, when it comes to the question of God, we should keep the doors open. We should remove those blinkers, stop pigeonholing ourselves, and just, take more of an objective approach to the question of God. Especially understanding when Muslims are talking about God, we're talking about a being that's beyond the physical. We're talking about a being that's not limited to the material physical world. We're talking about a being that created the entire physical existence, right? So we have to take a very broad approach to this.
Sure. Thank you. And try guys, just because I'm being messaged a lot about how many people are waiting, just try and keep it wrapped up in about a minute and a half your responses.
Sorry.
Thank you very much for that, Imran. Hamza, in regards to God not being demonstrated, that's what Carlos is saying. So he will not believe in something that can't be demonstrated. How would you respond to that?
Well, it depends what he means by demonstrated. But it's true. I mean, one would argue that in reality, God doesn't need demonstration from that point of view. What do I mean by that? I mean that God is innate, is natural, is part of the inner disposition, and you use your intellect in the Islamic tradition, your aql, to really understand your innate disposition. But if your innate disposition is clouded, then that form of knowledge that has been given to you by the Creator, it won't come through. It won't be awakened. So it depends what I mean by demonstrated. And there's so many arguments that we can the position I follow is that the arguments may not do much for you. It might be something else. It might be a spiritual experience. It might be you having a kind of great interpersonal relationship with a Muslim. It might be you accessing direct revelation like the Quran. Because you see, our conception of what it means to be a human is not just an abstract kind of functional robotic model, but rather the human being is an aql, is an intellect, has a fitra, an innate disposition, has a ruh, a soul, has a qalb, a heart, has an aql, and the intellect is a function of the heart in Islamic tradition, and it has a fitra, and the fitra is clouded. And within the fitra, the innate disposition, there are forms of proto-knowledge in the Islamic tradition that God is a reality and that he's worthy of worship, but that clouded. So it could be that a sound, rational argument, philosophical argument, whatever, can uncloud your innate disposition to awaken the truth within, or it could be something else, or it could be a combination of things. So when you ask me, it needs to be demonstrated, well, I need to find out who you are, because I don't know where your cloud is. Maybe you need a rational argument. Maybe you need a good hug. Maybe you need some love. Maybe you need some really strong Quranic verses to wake you up, because the reason for your disbelief is arrogance, right? You just don't know. So you have to bring it down to the kind of one-to-one personal relationship. But the thing is, I think one of the most powerful arguments for the existence of God is the argument from dependency or contingency,
which we're going to get on to. Thank you very much for that, Hamza. I just want to apologize to Carlos. I'm sure you have a comeback for Imran and, for example, what you mean by demonstrated. But since I've taken your email, and you can jump in again once your turn's over, but we will definitely bring you on again. Hijab, could you please speak about, Carlos said, we can't show that the universe is contingent. He said you can't show the universe is contingent.
Well, you've got two options, right? It's either contingent or independent. So it's either dependent or independent, right? So these are your only two options. It can't. There's nothing else. There's no. This is an exhaustive set of choices here. There's no other choice. Now, if we say it's, for the sake of argument, if we say it's independent, so it's not. So it's necessary and independent. It's not contingent. If that's the postulation, the problem would be that the universe is made up of parts, and not only parts, but parts which can be broken up into different pieces and disassembled from one another. And anything which is made up of parts is generated, and the universe is made up of parts. Therefore, it's generated. And so, therefore, what I'll say is that since the universe has the potential of being broken up, and it's dependent upon its constituent parts in order to constitute the whole, this is ample evidence that it's actually contingent. But even if, for the sake of argument, you want to say no, the universe is necessary, then what we would be saying to you is no problem. The universe, in your understanding, is necessary and independent, even though you have this contradiction that it's made up of parts, etc. Let's go with it. Let's go with the fact that it's independent. The question is, at what point, I would ask, at what point does believing an independent thing, a necessary thing, enable you to continue using your label of being an atheist? Because when does it become deism? When does it become classical theism? Because those two things are, if you look at the standard definitions of what deism is and what classical theism is, you'll find that it's consistent with believing a necessary existence, which is the universe. It's not inconsistent with that. Now, we're not saying that's Islam or that's the monotheistic God or the personal Abrahamic one, but what we're saying is that at that point where you concede that the universe is necessary and independent, at that point you've left, for all intents and purposes, an atheistic or an agnostic position.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Hijab. Carlos, we're going to add you after Adam Mitch. So if you want to come back, because I'm sure each one of the speakers had points that you wanted to respond to. Welcome, T-Jump.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Thank you very much for joining us. You have your YouTube channel as well, as I can see, and a very nice mic setup, I would say.
Thank you.
So, what's your question today?
Oh yeah, so I'm an atheist, by which I mean I believe there are no reasons to believe in the existence of God. To me, all of the arguments and evidence seem like God of the gaps. Like essentially it's something we don't know and you've made up an answer to it. Like you guys bring up the point that atheism can't justify morality or rationality or meaning and purpose and those kinds of things. Well, that's not exactly true. Like we can make up answers just like we think theists do. The reason we don't is because just making up answers isn't evidence. So just as theists can say, well, all of these things are grounded in a God, we could say it's grounded in naturalistic pantheism, which is an eternal, all-powerful nature, which is not conscious. So it's not like a God. It's not like theism. And we can say that rationality and morality are just undiscovered laws of nature. So atheists can account for rationality and morality and meaning and purpose with even better made-up answers than what we think theists do. But the reason we don't supply those answers is because there's no actual evidence to support that. So when you keep saying that, well, atheists can't account for X, like rationality, well, that's not exactly true. Like morality specifically, we know that most philosophers are moral realists. They believe in objective morality, even though about 15% are theists. So most atheist philosophers also believe in moral realism and can account for morality without a God. But the reason we don't is because there's no actual evidence to support one of these alternatives over the other. So we just admit we don't know, and we're just going to be happy with we don't know. And that's a rational position. It's rational to say, right now we don't know, and we're just going to stop there. We don't need to try to account for all these things or make up accounts, even though we could.
Excellent. Thank you so much, T-Jump. Just to summarize, what T-Jump is basically asking is about meaning, morality, and rationality can be justified or explained under atheism, but it's also something which is he acknowledges. I'm guessing you mean it's not. Well, actually, I don't put words in your mouth. Maybe you can clarify when the speaker speaks. So, Imran, why don't you start us off on meaning?
Yeah, so look, I think as a general point first, saying you can provide an account, but you don't acknowledge it or you don't provide an account for it. The main question is, do you live by these things? Because remember, we live real lives, right? So to dismiss morality and meaning and saying we can make it up, but we don't because we don't have evidence for it, it sounds good, from a purely rational discourse perspective. But in real life, how do you live? Do you live with virtue? Do you live, practicing morality? Do you live with meaning? That's what I'm interested in. Do you live by these things? And if you do, how do you account for these things on atheism and naturalism in the absence of God? That's the key here. Because for me, it's all about the practical, real life. It's about the real life practicality of this whole thing. There's a level of, we can have that rational discourse. Okay, sounds good. Okay, you can account for it, but you don't because you don't have evidence from your perspective, etc. But when you live your lives, how do you live? Do you live acknowledging that there is good and bad, right and wrong? Do you live acknowledging that there is meaning to your life? And if you do, how do you account for them? That's what I'd really like to know.
Excellent. T-Jump, you'll get a chance to hopefully respond to that if we have enough time. Hamza, your thoughts either on rationality or morality or meaning, or which one you want to choose, or all of them?
Yeah, I mean, look, this whole setup is slightly a little bit problematic because you can't flesh out these ideas with someone in a deep and meaningful way. I'm not saying this to be self-defeating here, but I'm saying it is not conducive to fleshing these things out, right? So, look, let's talk about morality, for example, to reference the majority of philosophers, that a lot of the moral philosophers are moral realists, and therefore we can't find a naturalistic account for morals being objective and independent. That's not necessarily an argument. That's a form of an argument from an authority, which can be a logical fallacy, and it could also be seen as an argument from popularity, just because lots of people do it, therefore it must be true. We have to zoom in on these ideas. So if we mean by moral realism that morals are mind independent, okay, that they're not based on an individual perspective, they need some kind of grounding. This is meta ethics, moral ontology. So you need to explain their objectivity, meaning explain that they are mind independent, and you need to explain where they came from. Now, philosophical naturalism has a huge problem. Not only this, atheists who adopt the Darwinian mechanism to explain what makes us human and therefore explains our sense of morality, they cannot explain objective morals. For example, a recent piece of research in 2020 called Evolutionary Moral Realism has tried to justify moral values, objective moral values, by grounding them in deep biological structures. So they're not philosophically necessary, they're biologically necessary, in deep biological structures that are based on cooperative environments that give rise to species that are intelligent and social. The problem with this here is it creates a massive problem for things like truth being a moral value, which undermines the very basis of trying to find out if moral values are objective or not. And that's a massive discussion to have. But the point is, there are very deep and interesting discussions that we should have in modern philosophy, and even referring to philosophy of biology. But we can't flesh this out right now. But I would say if someone's made a claim that many moral philosophers are atheists and they believe in moral realism, I would like to say, okay, then show me how that makes sense. And the other thing I want to add is, we're not making God up as an explanation for these things. You could see it the other way around. You could see it as an axiomatic argument, which is, well, given the fact that we are rational, given the fact that there are objective moral values, this means God exists. It's not a God of the gaps per se. It's more of an axiomatic argument, because you could argue in this way: if objective moral values exist, God exists. Objective moral values exist, therefore God exists. So it's not a God of the gaps argument. It's an axiomatic argument, which I would say it's not necessarily the position that Day Jump has mentioned. And saying that we could explain rationality with natural laws, I'm not going to let them get away with that. Show me.
Okay. Wait.
Just a question.
Yeah.
Suppose, just as a question, we need to, when someone says there can be a naturalistic explanation for rationality and morality, and say, oh, we could refer to this natural law, eternal nature kind of thing.
Yeah.
Let's flesh that out. Let's articulate that, because once you start talking about it, then we'll be able to find out how it's not coherent.
Yeah. So that's what I've been asked by the admin to continue the conversation between you two, because obviously it's the first time you're on here, and also T-Jump is of course a YouTuber who has waited a long time. So just on the topic of rationality, if you can go back and forth, and I'll ask Hijab and Imran to be a little bit, just go comb your rabbit's hair or just busy.
Well,
let him respond to.
Yeah, sure. Sorry.
It's not Tom, it's T-Jump.
Sorry.
Well, my name is Tom. So yeah, to explain rationality is pretty simple, actually. We know that reality is reality. And the fact that reality is reality gives us the law of identity, A equals A. So we know logic and math are just descriptions of reality. They're like languages. We can use logic and math to describe the way reality is, and that's how we can ground logic and reason. It's just a description of the way reality is.
Yes. I don't disagree with that. I think when we talk about that atheism cannot explain rationality, what we're basically saying is, if you're an atheist that adopts a Darwinian mechanism to explain the evolution of our cognitive faculties, then we can't trust our cognitive faculties. Why? Can I explain that?
Yeah, it's easy. I mean, Darwinian faculties are irrelevant to whether or not we can trust our mind. The fact that we came from like random processes doesn't mean that it's not true that they work. So the fact where we came from is just a genetic fallacy. It doesn't matter where we came from. What matters is do our cognitive faculties work? And to understand if they work, we would test them in reality, not look about where they came from.
No, this is not the genetic fallacy. This is more of, okay, so I adopt the Darwinian mechanism to explain what makes me human, okay? So we want to basically explain our rational faculties, okay? So here's the question. Can we trust our rational faculties under the Darwinian mechanism? That's the question, okay? So if you're an atheist that adopts a Darwinian mechanism, then you need to start talking about these things. This is a question of epistemology. So the original argument used to be from Quine and others was, okay, well, it does make sense because natural selection would have selective, truth reliable cognitive faculties over unreliable cognitive faculties, because they're fitness enhancing. It's conducive to survival and reproduction. Now, there was a bit of a discussion going on, and that discussion continued, and they basically concluded, sorry, that's my rooster, yeah? Basically, they concluded that, okay, there is no necessary link between natural selection and survival and truth, because you can have unreliable cognitive faculties that can produce false beliefs and you could lead to survival. For example, Professor O'Brien, for example, they come up with these thought experiments. A thought experiment can be, I'm a jungle person, I believe all fungi are poisonous, and as a result I survive. That's a false belief because it's not true all fungi are poisonous. White butter mushrooms are very good for you. So then they continue the discussion, then they develop something called evolutionary reliabilism. Now, evolutionary reliabilism is probabilistic. It's basically saying that natural selection, it was far more likely for natural selection to select truth reliable cognitive faculties over unreliable cognitive faculties that produce false beliefs. Now, the whole discussion in the philosophy of biology and epistemology is, well, how can we justify that statement? Is it true? Now, if you not only look at natural selection, but you look at genetic drift, because there are other mechanisms to explain biological change that constrain natural selection in some degree. And if you look into the empirical evidence, then my conclusion is we can't trust our rational faculties.
Right. So again, this is really easy. It's been solved in philosophy for a long time. The argument you're referring to is Plantinga's evolutionary argument against naturalism, the fact that we evolved and the evolution may not have selected for truth and may have selected for survivability instead. It's been solved in philosophy. Like, it's not really a serious issue anymore. It's the fact that evolution can't produce logical contradictions. Like, evolution can't cause you to believe that there's a round square or that 1 + 1 = 7. It's just the fact that because we are limited in reality, our brains evolved in reality, it can't cause us to believe not reality. It's like saying could evolution cause us to believe a round square? Well, the answer is no. I mean, it's literally impossible for us to imagine a round square because it's something that isn't real. It's like something that's a contradiction in reality. So anything that evolution causes us to believe can't be those kinds of contradictions, which means something about our evolutionary mindset, our rationality, is going to necessarily be true because it's going to be limited by reality. It can't be a contradiction like a round square. And so that things like logic and math are going to be true regardless of how evolution develops at all, because they have to be. It's a logical contradiction for them to be otherwise. And we know that certain parts of our rational faculties don't work. Like we have a propensity to attribute agency to things that have no agency. Like if we see a rustle in the grass and we think it's a lion, we run away and survive. And so our brain selects for those kinds of beliefs, which is, I think, the same way that we come to the God belief, is that we like attribute agency to things that don't have agency, like what created rationality, when we don't need to. We can explain rationality pretty simply. It's a feature of reality, and our brains evolved in reality, and evolution can't cause us to believe in contradictions for the same reason reality can't have contradictions.
Well, I don't know how that deals with the argument per se. And also, I would disagree with something that you've postulated there, because there is research in cognitive science that basically says that if you look at evolutionary genetic algorithms and game theory, they come to conclusion that it was probably more likely that natural selection selected our ability not to have true perceptions over true perceptions, right? It was more fitness enhancing. So from that perspective, I would disagree with that postulation. It might make sense conceptually in an abstract philosophical sense, but when you look at the empirical data, there is some kind of justification to show that in actual fact that it was probably more likely that natural selection selected our ability not to see things as they are, right? To see things as they're not, right? So I don't know how that basically fits in with what I've said, and I don't know how that basically undermines the position that I've just articulated, because I'm not really articulating Plantinga's position, because I think he goes too far. For example, in Dean in 2018, one of the most recent papers on evolutionary reliabilism, what he basically discusses is he responds to Stitch and Plantinga, and I agree with Dean's position. I think Stitch and Plantinga, they go too far in undermining evolutionary reliabilism. However, what Dean does say, and you should read the paper, it's a really good paper, he basically makes a concession and says, this doesn't justify evolutionary reliabilism and we need more empirical evidence. Now, we'll go to the empirical evidence. And
I'm sorry, just to cut you off there. I've got T-Jump's email address. I can set up a discussion with both of you later on. T-Jump's a YouTuber as well. I'm sure he'll be more than happy, won't you? Sure.
Yeah, for sure. Can I respond for like 10 seconds? Because I can answer that.
Go for it. Sorry, if it's okay, can I just jump from Hijab straight to Adam, because I'm going to have to skip Hijab giving you a response simply because Adam's been waiting a very long time.
Sure.
Really sorry about that, but I've got your email. I'm going to set up a discussion between both of you. Yeah.
Cool.
But you got 10 seconds.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, the response is that evolution does select for our like biases, fallacies, things that we get wrong, but it can't select for wrong rationality. It can't give us a wrong rationality. It's the laws of logic. It can't give us a wrong law of logic.
Yeah. I know you want to respond to that, Hamza, but I'm not going to let you. we could do that another time. Thank you so much, T-Jump, and we're definitely going to have you again. Adam, welcome to the show. Sorry.
Thank you.
No
worries.
And I'll direct it to Muhammad Hijab.
Yeah. All right. So since I'm limited in time, I'm just going to ask pretty quickly here. I'm curious with regards to the punishment of hellfire of non-believers. God seems to talk about in the Quran that non-believers will like burn for an eternity. And I'm just like wondering, how is that justified in a sense? Like how is that fair? I mean, because some people would say that we didn't ask to be created, and therefore being punished for an eternity might not seem as fair for a merciful God. So that's just what I wanted to know, just quickly.
Hijab, thank you so much, Adam, Mitch, and Hijab was. Could you answer that question, and then we'll see stop S. Hijab.
Yeah, so what I wanted to do before I answered that question is just bring everyone to the actual question of the show, which is the question of the show is atheism rational? Is that correct? Yeah. Am I correct in thinking that?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So if the question is atheism rational? And we've defined, like, what I want to understand is this: is that if it's either yes or no, right? Atheism is either rational or it doesn't have it's not rational, right? So if that's the case, now what I want to do is ask the question: if atheism is rational, and rationality is that which pertains to reason, and reason is reason, in order for it to be, needs to make some kind of logical inference, needs to have some kind of explanatory power. I want atheists that are coming on the show and those who are listening to me right now to always ask yourself, to what extent, if at all, can atheism, or does atheism have any explanatory power? Through atheism, can we have any can we make any logical inferences? This is the crux of it all, because if atheism does not have the capacity, yeah, to do those things, in other words, it doesn't have any explanatory or refutational or power, or we can't use it for logical inference, then in what sense do we mean that atheism is rational? In what sense do we mean that? In the sense that it doesn't contradict itself as a postulation? The previous caller was talking about, I don't know. And this exact articulation is what I was criticizing in the beginning when I came on the show. And I'm saying, if you say I don't know, then that itself is an agnostic knowledge claim. It is a knowledge claim. If you say I don't know, you have to know that you don't know. And if you know that you don't know, the question is, how do you know that you don't know? You know, so these are all things that we need to think about. Going to the question that was asked in terms of why is it fair, hellfire for disbelievers. So obviously in the Quran, in chapter 17, verse 15, the Quran says, وَمَا كُنَّ مُعَذِّبِينَ حَتَّى نَبْعَثَ رَسُولًا. We weren't going to punish people until we sent them a message. And which means to say that, God doesn't punish individuals, and this is the understanding of the scholars of Islam, that God doesn't punish people unless they have been given decent exposure to Islam, to the idea that God is worthy of worship, which should connect with your fitrah, or your innate predisposition to believing in God. A predisposition, I may add, which is anthropologically justified through studies like Justin Barrett studies and stuff like that, which shows us that actually we're born with a quote unquote receptivity to believing in God. So we don't believe that all so-called disbelievers or non-Muslims are going to go to hellfire forever, but those who have been exposed to the message and deny the message. That's the idea of a kafir. A kafir is not just a non-Muslim. A kafir is someone who covers up the truth. Actually, in Arabic, a kafir is a farmer, because the farmer, he puts seeds under the ground and he basically covers it up. Funny enough, the word infidel is actually not bad for that, even though it's not great, because infidel is someone who's covers up the truth, right? So it's actually quite an accurate translation. So an infidel is someone who's linguistically covering up the truth, just like a farmer covers up the seed. Now, having said that, why is it the case that there's an eternal punishment in the hellfire for those who disbelieve in the message? That shows you the severity of the purpose of life. That's what it shows you, the severity of the purpose of life. I mean, the postulation or the presupposition, we should say, that, and Abdullah Andalusi, I'm going to give him credit for saying this one time, because it's stuck in my mind when he gave this example. I'm sure it's going to stick in you guys' mind as well. He said, look, it's not the case, that every time you do something as a crime, that you're punished in accordance with it in terms of time. So, for example, if I kill someone right now, if I bring out a knife and stab someone in their throat, or let's use a contemporary example. 6 minutes of when that thug officer put his knee on Floyd, George Floyd. So does he deserve only 6 minutes of punishment? I mean, I don't think anyone will say he deserves only 6 minutes of punishment. He deserves a very long punishment. We could argue what kind of punishment that will be here. But what I'm saying is, so the postulation that it should be time bound, that, okay, so if you do something for X amount of time, that your punishment should be the same, is false even on our worldly standards. So what we're saying is that the severity of the punishment is contingent on the severity of the crime. And shirk, or the idea of association of partners with God or disbelieving in God is such a heavy crime that this I want to de-scope this thing, because I don't want to make it seem, sorry to say, yeah, in this discussion that, you know, atheism is some kind of acceptable option. Yeah, with all due respect, if you die an atheist, you're going to go to hell and you are going to burn forever. With all due respect, if you die having heard the truth, you're going to burn forever. That's what we believe. Yeah, and that is going to be the hellfire. It's a very severe thing. It's not like, you know, armchair philosophy. You can just have a little biscuit, have a little tea, and if you're a Muslim, it's okay. If you're a Christian, it's okay. This is a serious matter, because actually you're born to believe in. You're born with the purpose, yeah, to believe in God. And if you can't even fulfill your basic human function, the punishment you're going to get as a result of that is so severe and so continuous that you're going to wish to come back and as the Quran said, and redo your trial here in the dunya, in the world. So yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Hijab. Adam, please just hang on for a second. Hamza's book, The Divine Reality, actually covers this, and I just want Hamza to also cover this topic, and then we'll give Adam a chance to for any follow-up questions, because we've been waiting a long time. So Hamza, could you come in, The Divine Reality, in which you speak about the problem of hell and the particular question that Adam
I don't think I talk about the problem of hell, but I think the way Hijab has articulated it is brilliant. It's the way I would have articulated it. But there's another question that Adam actually expressed, which was, I didn't choose to come onto this planet. I didn't choose to come on Earth. Now, there's two ways that you could attack that question. The first way is, well, you know, in the kind of primordial sense, in before we ourselves entered our bodies, if you like, you know, Allah said in the Quran that He asked us, "Who is your Lord?" And we all said, "You are our Lord." So we had that kind of agreement. But also, even just from a philosophical position, Allah is your creator. He doesn't have to ask. He doesn't need your permission. Right? Imagine if I make a Lego robot and then I say to Lego robot, you know, should I put your battery in now? Yeah, you know, it's my robot. Yeah, Allah. And this is our kind of metaphysic, the way we see everything. And this is part of the what you call the oneness, affirming the oneness of the divine. And they're like three general aspects of affirming the oneness of the divine. Number one is the oneness of His creative power. The fact that He owns everything. He owns me and you, right? He owns. We don't have this kind of neoliberal presupposition that, you know, oh, I own myself. You know, you could talk about that in your own within the liberal universe. Yeah, you could talk about that. But the fact of the matter is, Allah owns us, right? He's the master and over everything. He has power over everything. He created everything. He is the Lord of everything that exists. And then you have the wonders of His names and attributes, which we affirm, and we believe that they're unique and that they're maximally perfect without any deficiency or flaw. His names and attributes are to the highest degree possible, and we believe in the wonders of God's divinity, meaning that, you know, He is the only deity worthy of worship, and that we must single out and direct all acts of worship to God alone, the internal acts of worship of the heart and the external acts of worship to the acts of worship of the limbs as well. We direct that to Allah alone. So, you know, once you understand that, then the question of, well, I wasn't given permission, I didn't want my life, or I wasn't asked to come on Earth, so we don't have that position, because by virtue of the fact that Allah owns us, Allah, the master of everything, He owns our bodies, He owns everything that we do. So those are two ways of addressing that question, the other question that you raised.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Hamza, and also for some of the what I was referring to in terms of hell was what Hamza was referring to in terms of Imam Ghazali and getting.
Oh, right. Okay, good. So yeah. So
you forgot what's inside your book.
Yeah, so the scholars of Islam
right now.
Yeah, the scholars of Islam have discussed this. They basically said, like even Al-Ghazali, the 11th century polymath and theologian, he basically said that, you know, I think he was talking about the Byzantines. He said, look, if there's a whole town that all they hear is negativity about the Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace, then, you know, do they have, you know, are they going to be excused? And there is a hadith, a prophetic tradition that is authentic, that talks about the 4 non-Muslims that actually go to paradise. And they include the ones who are too old to hear the message, the ones who were, I think, majnoon, insane, and the other 2 categories I forgot. But the point is that they get tested on the day of judgment. And in a particular tradition, an angel or God says to them, go into the hellfire. And then when they throw themselves into the hellfire, it turns into paradise because they obeyed God. And obedience is an expression of worshiping the divine. So they fulfilled their purpose of existence, of being in reality. They fulfilled that purpose. So we have a very nuanced tradition. It's not, black and white from that point of view. But at the end of the day, if you heard the message and you reject the divine, then exactly what Muhammad Hijab said, then you're in huge trouble. And this is the whole point of YouTube channels like this, Muhammad Hijab's YouTube channel, Subboor's, Imran, in order to articulate and convey the message in the most intelligent and appropriate manner to awaken the truth within you, because the truth is already within you, that God exists and that he is worthy of worship. But the final thing I just want to add, just to summarize, we ask the wrong questions sometimes. We say, how can a loving God send you to hell? That's the wrong question. The question should be, how can you choose hell over a loving Lord? And that's what we forget. We have chosen hell over a loving Lord, because Allah says in the Quran, for non-Muslims to understand, Allah says he prefers belief for his servants. Do you know what this means? Look at the classical exegesis here. This means that God doesn't want to harm you. He wants your guidance. He doesn't want you to go to hell. We choose hell, as Allah says, and we did not wrong them. They wronged themselves. We make the choice. We close the door to divine grace and mercy. And then you have to face the consequences.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Adam Mitch, I need your email address because in the private chat you haven't sent it yet, and I'll send you, our organization, IR, will send you a free copy of The Divine Reality. Adam, would you like to ask any follow-up question before we move on?
Nah, I think that was actually a good answer, to be honest. Yeah, that made perfectly sense.
I invite you to become a Muslim, my brother. He's gonna think about it.
He's gonna think about it. So Adam Mitch, I'm waiting for your email address, and once you send me your email, we will send you a free copy of The Divine Reality, and we're also going to send you a free copy of the Quran, inshallah. Jazakallah, not Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much for joining us. Okay, so on to stop spamming. And very happy. I think we're all laughing here. Is he the real stop spamming? Or is he actually fake? Is he actually a fake account? He's got so many accounts.
No, this is me. It's me.
You have to prove it. You have to prove that. You don't need to, I don't know.
Well, I can tell you that Hamza and I go back like 10, 11 years, and
I
have refuted every single claim he's ever done.
He refuted himself.
And I can tell you everything he said
I have to do
about Tom Holland and what I have repeated, and that should be evidence enough. Imran, I've killed his entire LDM, his GDM, his everything.
That's it. That's what's coming.
Guys, what are you doing? You're putting people to sleep. You are doing what you are doing every day, and that is selling your dawah. We know this stuff. The question is atheism, I mean, what a stupid word, what a misnomer. Is it rational? That is the question. And it doesn't help what Hijab is doing, his usual thing with his shifting the goalposts and then throwing out some words that hopefully nobody understands. That is not the way to do things. Hamza, you've been on the Magic Sandwich show. You've seen how people do this and how not to do this, and you're doing exactly how not to do this. Come on, guys. You should have been on the Gin and Tonic show a couple of times and seen how you go and handle people, how you let them speak if the topic is the other person and not you. Okay. T-Jump has done a wonderful job of defining rational, and it's about, clear thought. It's about reasoning. It's about logical, sensible. And if you go irrational, it's even better, because then it's deprived of normal, and I'm reading this off here, deprived of normal mental clarity or sound judgment, not in accordance with reason, utterly illogical, not endowed with the faculty of reason. Now, excuse me, if somebody gives me a closed box, I have no idea what's in it, and he says, in here is a fire-spitting dragon. Is it irrational to go and say, excuse me, do you have any reason why I should believe that? Do you have any evidence to back up your claim? How is that irrational? It is totally and only rational. It is the only response that you should have if somebody gives you an empty box with a humongous claim, that you then ask, what is going on here? Okay, let's have a discussion. Excellent. This is what we want. Yep, Hijab, come on, go.
Just a quick thing, Hamza, why don't you respond to the rationality thing about T-jump?
Well, there was the first. Okay. Before I let Hijab address, stop spamming. That's a false analogy, yeah, and therefore it's illogical because you can't make it the same as God's existence, right? Because what we're saying is that there is a divine entity, and all the signs are there, self-evident and explicit signs are there for an entity to be behind the box. For example, if someone knocks on the door, you're not going to say it's irrational to claim there's no one behind the door. What you're saying is there's a box, we have no other indication, and therefore we're going to say there isn't a fire-spitting dragon. But that's a false analogy, because what we're saying here is maybe it's more analogous to someone knocking on the door, giving you their name and saying it's me, it's John, and their ID, right? Which is revelation, which is all the philosophical arguments. So it's a bit of a false analogy, which I'll let unpack. But the Tom Jump question about the way you define rationality, defining rationality is actually not the problem here. The problem here is, can atheism, if you're the type of atheist that, for example, would adopt the Darwinian mechanism to explain your rational faculties, or even if you're from naturalists, can that explain our rational faculties? That's what we're saying. We're not saying, well, let's define what's rational. You could define it how you want. The English dictionary, a philosophical dictionary, to be honest, I don't give the monkeys. The point is, if you adopt philosophical naturalism as your philosophical worldview, or even atheism in the kind of popular sense that you adopt the Darwinian mechanism to explain your rational faculties, can those things, those ideas, those postulations, can they explain our rational faculties? My argument is no. And when you study the philosophy, and even you study the philosophy of biology and even the science itself and the empirical data, you have to say, we're going to be skeptical. So as Imran said in the beginning, we have this intuitive idea that yes, we are rational creatures, and we can justify the fact that we believe and we know that we're rational creatures. But under philosophical naturalism or under the Darwinian mechanism, we can't do that. In my view, it would have to lead you to the idea that you'll have to be a classical skeptic.
Hamza, you know me well enough to know that this is not going to fly, because what you're suddenly doing is you're attaching a rucksack and packing millions of things into that rucksack. We're talking about an atheist. An atheist is just, I am a person without a God belief. I don't give a continental flying whatever for evolution or Darwin, or I don't care. It does not influence whether or not I believe a God exists. So just leave it. So all I'm saying, it is very rational to ask a question without attributing, because what you are doing now is you are attributing a whole lot of things to this dragon. You are saying this dragon created the world and he is now coming to you. You need to hatch all eggs and you're only allowed to wear green. No, there is no attachment yet. You only have a box.
No, that's
you might see this different. I don't.
Yeah, you can't start that way, because what you're doing is what you accuse theists of doing, which is misrepresenting your position, because we don't believe it's just a box, and we're just making a claim there's something in the box.
It's not about you. It's about me.
That's what we call a straw man. So instead of putting yourself, stop spamming, stop straw manning. Yeah. The point is, we don't believe it's just the box. Yeah.
I am not discussing a Muslim. I'm not discussing a theist. I am discussing me, a person without a God belief.
Okay.
I do not attribute anything to this dragon. I'm not saying that the God claim is automatically, it comes complete as a package with the universe and with all the other claims. No, there are 50 million different, well, not quite, 3,000 different gods with all different features, different attributes and everything. Well, I cannot go and say, no, they all do the same thing.
I think you should listen to that. Therefore, you're probably in a position now to, like, okay, give me some evidence for the divine. basically what you're trying to say. And I think
Of course, that is rational.
Brilliant. Well, you should now listen to Hijab, who gives you a brilliant summary of the contingency argument. Is it all right?
No,
Hijab?
I've already destroyed that. That doesn't work with me. I've already done that.
Here, maybe listen. Stand in the possibility that you could be wrong, and stand in the possibility that Hijab could articulate the contingency argument in a powerful way.
Look, if you want to talk about details, come on the gin and tonic and we can talk about the details. But today, here and now, it is only about, is atheism rational? It is not about, is contingency argument stupid or not, or dishonest or circular, or just another version of the infinite regression. This is not the question. The question is atheism rational? And I have just made the point that absolutely, yes, it is. Can anybody refute me? No.
Okay, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How do you define rationality?
How do I define rationality?
Yeah.
Do you want me to repeat what I just said?
Yeah, you not only repeat it, but get it from a source.
I've just taken different dictionaries and they all say that it's an adjective. It's
give
rational.
me one
Adjective based on clear thought and reason, logical or sensible, of sound mind, sane.
So how do you define reason?
I don't define reason. I don't know what reason. Reason is a way. Is a way of thinking. Is a line that I am following in a thinking process.
Sorry.
Should I repeat everything?
No, I'm just asking. Is this Are you reading this from a dictionary? Yeah.
No. I just said I copied a couple of words from a dictionary to know what I'm talking about.
He has a script.
No, but when you look at it, when you look at the dictionary definitions, they're a little bit out of line, and especially even encyclopedic definitions, they're a little bit out of line of what you're saying. So let's get that cleared up first, because reason is that which usually, has explanatory power, is justification.
No, that's nonsense. Stop this, please. Come on, get out of this.
Okay, no problem. It's nonsense, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not about logical inference, no.
It is about, is atheism rational? We are not discussing reason. We are not discussing any kind of explanatory power. There is no explanatory power. If I ask a question, is it rational to believe God exists?
If you don't mind, just to come back on what you said it's not about reason, but if you look in the dictionary, the word rationality is that which pertains to reason. So you can't talk about rationality without talking about reason.
I can do that without having to go now and discuss reason. The thing is, you're deflecting. I don't want to deflect.
If rationality is all about, it's pertaining to reason, so we need to know what reason is to see, okay, when we say reason, does atheism fit the category or not? So when we say, okay, when we look at, for example, let me just give you some sources, right? Since you haven't provided any. If you look at,
Hijab, I'm not going to go there. Listen to what I say once again. And please don't misrepresent me. Hamza has just said this is something that I don't like.
I'm not saying anything about
what I said is based on clear thought and reason, logical or sensible, of sound mind, sane. All right, I've given you several things, not just reason.
Where'd you get the definition from?
These are different dictionaries.
Like, where does it say clear thought?
Do you want me now to find where I found? There's a dictionary name of where I found this?
Yeah. For example, exactly. If I say to you, look, if you look at the Cambridge Dictionary,
no, I don't have time for that now. I just went to different dictionaries and I just copy pasted some words in here to know what I'm talking about.
Like you're getting it a little bit, with all due respect, like you're getting it a bit confused. Because let me give you an example, right? If you go to Britannica right now, well, come on, let's have a conversation. We're using sources to kind of allow the water to go through the pipes, Otherwise, it's just going to be like a semantic game. If we're saying, if we go to Britannica Encyclopedia and you write the word reason down, which is a respected encyclopedia, it's gonna
try rational. I didn't give you the definition for reason. But like I gave you the definition for rational. So stop waffling, please.
But listen, rationality is that which pertains to reason.
I didn't say that.
No, that's what the dictionary says.
Okay, great. Now you want to get your definition, and now we discuss your definition.
No,
I don't care for that. The question is atheism rational? I've showed yes, it is. And what you're doing now is you're saying, I want to talk about reason.
No, but we need to kind of get this right, if you don't mind, because if our whole question is atheism rational, yeah, and I'm giving you definitions both from encyclopedic sources and dictionary sources of what the word means in the English language, and you're rejecting it, so I don't know how to continue unless you want me to switch language. Am I speaking your
language? I'm fine with doing that, but the point is, it doesn't make sense to now speak about reason only. You look.
No,
you've got an agenda.
What's your name again?
Okay, you have something about reason, and you want to go to the reason.
No, man. Look, sorry. If you go into the dictionary, we're speaking in English language. Rationality is that which pertains to reason. That's what it means. So we need to know what reason is to know what rationality is.
Okay,
you're stopping us. You're sorry, but you're stopping this conversation from progressing, because what you want to do is you don't want us to tell you that actually, in order for you to to use reason and rationality, then you have to allow for whatever it is the subject of information that or subject of investigation, to allow for a logical inference. Now, my question is, if logical inference and reason are connected with each other, okay? If reason entails logical inference, how does atheism allow us to make any kind of logical inference?
It doesn't.
That's a fair question.
It doesn't.
Okay, so it's not rational then, is it?
What? You are going from me asking a...
What do you mean what? You just said it yourself, it doesn't. So wait, hold on. What's what about that? I think you're basically, what you're doing is acting. I can see the performance in what you're doing, yeah? Because I'm an actor myself, as the people know.
I know.
I'm a very good actor. And you know what?
We all know that.
I'm a performer. You know, and they're going to give me a BAFTA soon. Yeah, but before they give me the BAFTA, and before they give me the Oscar, and before they put me on the shows, and the Channel 4 actually got in contact with me, I should tell you that, you know, and they tried to... Interesting, yeah? But before that happens, let me tell you something. Yeah? Right now, you just admitted, with all due respect, you said that it doesn't. Yeah, that's what you just said. It doesn't give you any logical possibility for inference. So by extension, therefore, what has atheism got to do with rationality? What has it got to do with it? You're saying is atheism rational? You're saying it is. That's okay, so prove it.
I think hijab. Sorry, just to get hijab, I think what he's saying is
Homo sapiens. We need to get him on. So
Subboor, can I ask something quickly? Just a quick question. I've just got a question for him.
Allow him to finish. With all due respect, if you're saying atheism rational, and your answer is yes, that's a claim. Sorry, you want to call it whatever you want to call it. Is atheism? So your claim is atheism is rational. Rational is that which pertains to reason. Reason is that which allows for logical inference. My question is, how does atheism allow for any kind of logical inference? You have to answer that. It's your claim.
Can I make a point of clarity here, hijab? Yeah. Well, I think what spamming is saying is that the rejection of the theist claim is a rational rejection, but that doesn't now follow that atheism now can give you now explanatory scope and power of all the other things in our lives and what makes us human. So there's such a difference, Habibi. So I think
no, I don't buy that. I don't buy this nonsense. All that's happening now is that if you're going to make the claim that atheism is rational, you're going to have to justify that claim with all due respect. If that's your claim, atheism is rational. Rational is that which pertains to reason. Reason is that which pertains to logical inference. Therefore, you need to tell me how atheism is connected to logical inference in any way, shape, or form, in an explanatory sense or a refutational sense. If you can't do that, then you can't claim that atheism is rational.
Or, just to make it a bit more specific, or what they'll have to do is to show why their rejection is rational, or why they don't.
That's refutational, right? So if they have refutational scope, then that's fine. But right now, there's nothing being provided. By the way, the analogy of the box with the dragon
is a false.
I mean, and then I reject 360 gods and so on. This is an embarrassing. Sorry, with all due respect, analogy. He asked the question. He said, "What's in the box?" Yeah, we're just asking what's in the box. But a question is different to a claim. The claim that's being made here today is that atheism is rational. You can't conflate a question which is interrogative with a claim which is declarative. Yeah. These are simple linguistic propositions. If you say that if you're saying that there isn't an X in the box, that's a claim. If you're saying X is not in the box, that's a claim. Yeah. Now, if you say, for example, the dragon's not in the box, that's a claim. But is that a falsifiable claim? No, you can actually try and falsify that. You can try and falsify that through the fact that there isn't a Tyrannosaurus Rex in the box. You can deny the or a dragon. You can try and falsify that. But by you falsifying it, you have refutational power. But in this case, our question is now with God, the explanation, the necessary being, the independent one. Yeah. How can you refute that? Because you've heard all the arguments before, so you need to show us how you're going to refute them. Instead of telling us about bots.
We need to give Stop Spamming a chance to respond, and then I'm going to move on to Homo sapiens or Homo sap, or whatever it is, and you can respond to whatever he says, or if you don't want to, it's fine.
Okay. And like I said, we're very open to have any kind of discussion on this on our show where we have more time. Now, the point that I'm making is the answer to the question, is atheism rational? The answer is yes. 100% and totally. If now somebody goes and says, yeah, but hang on, if rational, then this also can mean this and can mean this, and then a roundabout way, suddenly this is made into a different claim. This is not the way that it works. And thank you, Hamza, for the I don't know, do I call it interpretation or translation or whatever? That is exactly the point. I am not allowing this to go into a claim that I am making. If you want to show me that this is irrational, cool, you can do it, but you can't. You can never show that it is irrational to go and find and ask a question, is this really
true? I haven't made the claim that it's irrational. Hold on, sorry. You said that atheism is rational. That's your claim. I haven't said
that is my claim, and I said if you want to show that it's irrational, go ahead, be my guest.
No. It's not. I'm not saying that. You said atheism is rational. That's a claim. Can you prove it, please?
Yes, it is very rational. It is logical and sensible to ask somebody what is actually happening, to ask for evidence before accepting something without evidence.
You're not getting this question. Atheism is a lack of belief in God. Right? No. If atheism is defined as a lack of belief in a deity or God,
no, it's not.
That's the problem.
I just told you, I'm without a God belief. It's not a lack. I'm not.
Sorry. What is it?
I am not lacking anything. It is not a lack of a belief. It is I am a person without a God belief.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Without means lacking in.
Okay, Homo sapiens is waiting. Just have your last word. Have anything?
Just let him. My question is simple. You made a claim. You have made a claim. Yeah, it's not for me to prove anything. You've made a claim. Atheism is rational. Yeah, that's not my claim.
Homo sapiens.
I'm going to repeat my question. Sorry, let's just give him one more chance.
Okay.
One more chance. Give him one more chance.
Okay, stop.
The claim that atheism is rational. Rational is that which pertains to reason. Reason is that which is connected to logical inference. My question is, how is atheism a lack of belief or without belief in God, or you don't believe in God or whatever it is? How is that connected to logical inference in any way? How is it connected to explanation or refutation?
Yep. So Hijab, we'll keep stop spamming here. The cat is very happy. We'll just keep it there.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you so much. You probably waited a good minute. Welcome to the show. What is your question?
Thank you. My question is, I saw a debate which is in Oxford with Cosmic Skeptic and Brother Muhammad Hijab. Other guys, I forgot his name. He raised a question that how can you 100% sure that Angel Gabriel is not the author of the Quran, or he revealed it to Muhammad?
Okay, just a quick thing. Homo sapien, are you an agnostic or an atheist? Sorry, are you an agnostic or an atheist?
Yes, I am agnostic.
Okay, so the question is, how do we know that the Archangel Gabriel gave revelation to the Prophet Muhammad? Okay, Imran, can you answer that question, please, because you haven't spoken in a
So,
while.
I really want to ask, stop spamming something, but I'll get to them maybe later.
Everyone.
No, because what fascinated me was the guy's been going for about 12 years straight with Hamza back and forth and everyone else. What drives him on atheism to do this, man?
I think he likes Hamza. I think.
I think it gives him reason for being. It gives his life some meaning. He's there. Maybe we'll get some input from him when he speaks again.
No, he's there. The cat's happy.
Yeah. Why does he have a sad cat on his? Yeah. Anyway.
Homo sap.
So yeah, just quickly on that point. Look, I'll answer in a very simple way. I think it sort of ties in with another question with some Christians assert as well. Well, how do you know the devil didn't reveal the Quran, etc.? Although it's not such an extreme question as that would be, but the simple thing is, look, from our tradition, we know that Jibreel had no reason to make the Quran up on behalf of God, because we know the role each of these beings play, right? So when you look at the Quran is very clear in regards to his message that this is from the creator of the heavens and the earth, and that Jibreel is his angel that is bringing the message down to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and it explains what the role of the angels are, which is they are beings who do what God tells them to do, right? So internally, it's very if you take the clear understanding of what the role of angels is, what their role is in bringing down the message to the Prophet, peace be upon him, then it makes no sense in claiming that the angel Gabriel of his own accord would make up the Quran, because they can't do this, the angels. Now, by extension, this ties in with and I think it'd be good to touch upon this. Now, some Christians will claim, they'll take an extreme example version of this and say, how do you know that the devil didn't reveal the Quran, but he came in the disguise of an angel, and delivered it to the Prophet? So the Prophet didn't know it was the devil, but he sort of, disguised himself. Well, again, if you look at the text, you know that the Quran exposes Shaitan, exposes his ploys, what he does, how to protect yourself against him. So if the devil was to be the one that reveals the Quran, then he would no longer be the devil by definition. It just defeats the whole purpose. So I think once you understand the Quran and you can establish that this is from God, and you understand the role of different beings and things that are created, then it makes no sense in claiming that the angel Gabriel or anything else for that matter wrote the Quran.
Another way of looking at this Subboor, another way of looking at it very simply is just ask the question, well, how do you know the angel Gabriel exists? And then he may say, the Quran says so. Oh, very much. You have to believe it. And then
yes,
absolutely. So, firstly, I'd like to apologize to Harakaman Gag. Sorry if I pronounced your name in any way that was wrong. You need to unmute yourself, my friend.
Okay.
Thank you for coming to the show. You've waited probably half an hour. So I'd like
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Oh yeah. How are you?
We're good. Do you have another browser open? Is there an echo?
Okay, yeah, I'll turn it off. It was the YouTube. How about now?
So firstly, thank you for coming on the show. You've waited about half an hour, so apologies for that. You're not an atheist or skeptic from what we understand, but someone from the Sikh faith. So welcome to the show, and what is your question?
Well, I just I enjoy your show. I know you. I'm a Londoner originally. I live in the States, but so just it's just interesting. I just wondering how come there are so many atheists now compared to before, and I'm not an atheist, but I think they do have a point of view though, and I don't know, the previous caller was he was an atheist, right? The one that was a cat. He was a cat.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think they have an interesting point of view, but it's just they don't represent themselves very well. He was being a cat, and why he was a cat, and yeah. So I wanted to come on your show, and yeah. So yeah, I was interested in how you go about meeting the people who have a different point of view on what you believe. Is it do you ask them why do they believe something different than you, or is it just they happen to always have that different opinion?
Sure. So thank you very much for that question, Harkaman. You've asked two things, so let's deal with the first one. And if we forget to answer the second one, you just stay online. You can ask a follow-up question. So the first question I want to put to Hamza which is that there's a lot of atheists in the world today, which Harakaman is wondering about, and they must have an argument, or he thinks they're just not articulate, but there seems to be something there.
Yeah, so let me just be very frank with everybody. You know, atheism is not an intellectual position. You know, you had stop spamming. He made a false analogy. What atheism comes up with false analogies and strawmans and misrepresentations of theistic positions. Many atheists do that, especially online. So look, the reasons for not only atheism but disbelief are many. For example, it could be a sense of self-sufficiency. We have a false, deluded sense of self-sufficiency. The Quran makes this very clear that we have this hubris, we have this ego, we have this arrogance. We think we are self-sufficient, and that creates the delusional psycho-spiritual mindset or attitude that we don't need anyone. And this is why you could link affluence with atheism. There is a correlation post-1950s between affluence and atheism. It's not necessarily an intellectual position. It's because I don't need anyone anymore. This kind of individualistic neoliberal landscape that we're creating, that the individual is primacy, as if we were catapulted outside of our mother's womb with a briefcase and a tie. Yeah, and we don't need anyone. Yeah, we have because we live in this affluent society and this, you know, individualism. What this has created within us is as if ontologically we don't need anyone, which is very false, because we know we're dependent on almost an infinite number of things, even for us to be here today. Like, you know, for the first 2 weeks when you're born, you know, if you were to be put in a corner of a room and not fed and not touched, you would die, or probably of dehydration, right? And there are so many things outside of our control that we depend upon, even now as adults, in order for us to function. So, but what happens is, because of medicine, because of money, because of affluence, it's create this sense of delusion of self-sufficiency. That's the first thing. The second thing is there are psychological, spiritual forces at play. For example, we could be arrogance, and we can have the type of arrogance that it becomes a barrier to divine grace and mercy. It could be that we're misinformed, genuinely. So there are so many different reasons why someone would not only reject faith, but someone would basically become an atheist. And not just that, there's also psychodynamic reasons too. And I'm not saying this to belittle atheists from that point of view. I'm just saying, look, this is my experience. When I speak to many people who have become atheists, a lot of the time it has nothing to do with rational arguments. So let me give you an example. I met this person at university after one of my lectures. He did a master's in quantum physics or something. And he was like, Hamza, the argument for God's existence doesn't make sense, right? I was like, really? The thing? And he was like, because causality doesn't make sense outside of the universe. Now, obviously, we have our position on this. There are great philosophical arguments. I believe Immanuel Kant had produced some kind of philosophical argumentation to use as a basis to refute this claim. However, I didn't want to get into that nitty-gritty, because I was thinking, is that really an excuse for his atheism? So I said to him, what do you mean by causality? To cut a long story short, he said to me, I don't know, because he realized if you study Western philosophy, metaphysics, they haven't even, got to grips with the idea of what is the nature of the causal link. Still lots of debate. He said, I don't know. I said, isn't it very interesting that you are using a key word in a sentence to refute God, but you don't know what that word really means? I said, look, bro, let's sit down. So we sat down. What was his real problem? It wasn't the so-called pseudo-intellectual argument. He was basically didn't have a connection with the divine. He didn't know how to pray properly or something like that, from what I remember. So he had other issues going on. Yeah. So a lot of these things could be psychodynamic. So there are it's multivariant. There are many reasons for disbelief. It could be psychospiritual. It could be a full sense of self-delusion. It could be, that you think you're independent now and self-sufficient. It could be arrogance. It could be pure ignorance. It could be you don't know. There's a whole range of reasons, right? Sure. But generally speaking, I don't want people to come away thinking that this new atheist movement or atheism as a movement online and offline is as a result of intellectual progress. That is not the case at all.
Absolutely. So sorry to cut you off, Hamza. Carlos Jeffers is going to end that in just once we answer these two questions. We've gone over time. So Carlos, we won't be able to answer a second round of questions. However, I've got your email address and we will be in contact. So we're going to go to Murderman and Ray, and then we're going to end the show. So Murderman, nice name. Thank you for coming onto the live stream. What's your question?
Well, I just more or less wanted to answer. Can you guys hear me, by the way?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I just wanted to answer kind of the thing is about atheists being rational. I just think it's not complicated to be an atheist. You don't have to be smart or intellectual to be an atheist. If you just held a position of I don't know, that's a form of disbelief, such that, like, if you just say I don't know if a God exists, you are functionally an atheist at that point, because you have a disbelief because you just don't know. So, like, if a God appeared in front of me right now, I would cease to be an atheist. It's really just that simple. And everything kind of, for me, exists on a spectrum of confidence.
Yep.
So, like, the more of this spiritual stuff or ghosts or any kind of supernatural things that people talk about that actually materializes, I'm able to experience, the more likely I am to believe it. Every one of those things I've ever investigated in my entire life has always had a rational, non-spiritual explanation.
Thank you,
So
Murder.
that's why I'm an atheist.
So, Murder Man, you sound like you're from Texas. Could you please make sure you leave your email in the private chat? I've just asked for your email. So please leave for your email. We won't be able to do any follow-up questions because of time, but thank you for joining us. So who would like to address that question except for Hamza?
I just want to say a couple of things actually on that. First of all, just on the question that came before, I wanted to add that we need to, when we're looking at the demographic studies of like the rise of non-religiosity or what's referred to in the works as like nons, it's more accurate to say that there's been an increase in irreligiosity or Christian apostasy, in the last, let's say, 60, 70 years, than it is to say that there's been an increase in atheism in the same way as we think it is. Because, for example, Linda Woodhead, who's written probably the most up-to-date work on this, has said that there's only 5.5%, when she looked at the data, only 5.5% of atheists in this country are strident atheists. There's only 5.5% of the population strident, confident atheists. The rest of them might be agnostic, might be they believe in a higher power of some sorts, but they're not atheists in the strict sense of the term. That's an important point. And Pew, when it's investigating the American landscape, revealed that 90% of the American public say that they believe in a higher power. Now, that's not atheism in any way, shape, or form. Even though maybe 40, 50, I can't remember, 55%, I can't remember the number now, percent of the population in America might be irreligious. So people maintain the belief in a higher power. And so it's not really, atheism isn't as big as we think it is. Because if we talk about 5.5% of the UK population are strident atheists in the confident sense that we've heard from lots of our viewers today, then that's very similar.
Just to cut you off, sorry, just cut you off in the middle. Hamza has to go. Hamza, just last word.
Guys, sorry, I need to go because I've got another Zoom thing. So may Allah bless you guys. Assalamu alaikum.
Sorry to cut you off, Hijab. Please carry on.
Yeah, so 5.5% is the same as the amount of Muslims there are in the UK. Yeah, so put that in perspective. They're not as big as you think they are. Number two, what was the thing that the guy asked? Yeah, so he was talking about spiritual. The word spiritual itself, I mean, if you look in the dictionary once again, and I'm sorry to have to keep referring to the dictionary, but because the word is, when I say spiritual, you say spiritual, we might believe in different things. So the only way we can make sense of this is to either look at the works, or to look at the dictionary. Otherwise, we might be talking about two different things. So if we look at the dictionary, usually it's talking about metaphysics. Now, you're saying whenever I've looked into metaphysics, but almost any claim that you're going to make is going to, like Imran said, it's going to require some kind of metaphysical investigation. You're going to have to talk about mathematics. You're going to have to talk about consciousness. You can't throw away the metaphysical interpretation. In fact, if you get rid of the metaphysics, you don't have any explanation for the reason why science is the way it is, etc., etc. So spiritual and metaphysics, since they seem to be in the same kind of category, like, I don't understand. That's one thing. How can you dismiss so-called spiritual explanations when most of them are required for the science to take place? Like, in a sense, if we say metaphysical, I mean, spiritual is metaphysics, right? What are we talking about? Does it have to be religious? If it's religious metaphysics, then we have to ask ourselves which religion. So we have to be very specific with terms, because I'm not sure what we mean by this. So number two is there's a difference in the question between are atheists rational and is atheism rational? So the question today is not are atheists rational, because many of them probably are in many other spheres. But when it comes to this, the question is atheism rational? And if you, and like the guy that came on camera but stopped spanning, he said yes, it is. Now, if you're making the claim that it is, then you have to come forward and provide the evidence for that claim, just like anything else. Otherwise, you're making an unsubstantiated claim. If you're saying atheism, is rational, and rational is that which pertains to reason, and reason is that which pertains to either explanation or refutation, or logical inference, then my question is, or justification, let's say justification as well.
Yeah.
How does atheism justify, explain, refute, or through it? How can we logically infer anything? So that's if you can't answer that question, then you can't answer the question. You can't say that atheism is rational.
Yep.
You can't say that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Hijab, for that. And for everybody who's just joining us, we have to end the show. I've taken a lot of emails. We'll do the same show, same time next week. I'm guessing I'll be able to convince Imran and Hijab to actually attend as well next week at the same time. Just to end upon, Jazakallah khair, Hijab, Hamza, Imran, for this. The last question I want to put to Imran before we end the show. The question that was actually asked by Murderman TX was, evidence for me is me seeing Allah. I want to see God, right?
Yeah.
And maybe you can give us a Quranic paradigm to end upon.
Yeah, bro. I think so. I was going to speak about this quickly anyway. I think that one of the biggest problems for atheists when it comes to them inquiring about God's existence and looking into evidence is there is an underlying mindset, psychology, which is that for me to believe in something, I have to see it. Empirical data, scientific evidence is the only real form of evidence for us to believe in something or acknowledge something as being true. This is a fundamental issue, bro. We have that paradigm is wrong. And that's why most atheists don't find God or turn to God. Even with the guy that came on, he says, he was referring to himself as a functional atheist because he says that he doesn't have evidence for God. Okay, well, follow that through then. If you are a functional atheist, meaning that you're someone that now lives like an atheist, therefore you are someone that's prone to the implications of atheism, and some of those being the things that we've touched upon today, that if you are an atheist, you can't make sense of rationality, you can't make sense of morality, you can't make sense of the meaning of life, you can't make sense of the purpose of life, you can't make sense of all of these things. And if you're an atheist, if you just sit and inquire about what atheism is leading you to and the position it's putting you in, that will be, I would argue, that will be enough evidence in and of itself for the honest, sincere atheist to recognize that at the very least, their worldview, this atheism or naturalism they're ascribing to, is not true. Right? It's just in how, now I can't find a better word, but just in how useless it is from the perspective of providing an account for those things that we know to be true as human beings. And that's what I really encourage atheists to do, to sit there and to ask themselves the question, okay, I'm an atheist, this is my worldview, these are the implications. I can't make sense of rationality, I can't make sense of morality, I can't make sense of the meaning of life or the purpose of life. These are fundamental things I need as a human being. These are things that make me a human being. And atheism strips me from being able to provide an account for these things. And that's the absurdity of atheism. You don't need to go further than this. I mean, anyone sincere and honest that sits and does this thinking, they'll realize atheism is false merely based on the fact that it has no utility, right? And therefore they should look elsewhere.
Absolutely. I think we've lost Hijab. Hijab, are you still there? I think he's gone. Thank you very much. Oh, yes. Okay, so just to end upon, thank you for everybody for watching this SC Dawah Live. We're going to be back next week at the same time. And I want everybody to tune in 5:30 on Wednesday, British Standard Time. Again, is Atheism Rational? And we will have all the same guests as previously. We will email them so they can come back and we have this conversation. I want to ask everybody watching, we need SC Dawah to continue, because it gives du'at like us a platform to share ideas, to give dawah, and for hundreds of thousands of people all across the world to find out about the message of Islam. So SC Dawah needs your support, and you have a link in the description, which is to support SC Dawah on Patreon. And why you should support SC Dawah on Patreon, I'm going to give the last word to Muhammad Hijab.
Well, because SC Dawah is at the front lines of producing content, and you'd have seen a lot of my content from my own channel is through the hard work, the graft, the editing work, the fast work of the production team at SC Dawah. They've spread into different. I mean, they've got SC Dawah Middle East, which has got almost 200,000 subscribers, almost the same size as the English channel. They've got operations in different language in Malaysian language, Indonesian language, and Turkish language, and Spanish language. Right now you could say that in terms of the program or the social media outfit, which is reaching the most people, and facilitating the biggest channels for dawah to non-Muslims in the Western world, surely it has to be SC Dawah. And so it's one of those ones where now, especially when we're talking about dawah to non-Muslims, if you want to make an investment and a correct one, we need to make sure that the production teams in SC Dawah are fully taken care of, and I can vouch for what they do. They are efficient. They're completely professional and very trustworthy. And so I would say that you should definitely go to the Patreon and subscribe to all of the channel with SC Dawah channels. The ones in the Middle East, that one, this one, you'll get excellent content. I mean, it's the most output you'll get. And one thing I wanted to say as well, sorry, before I log off here today, I wanted to say that you will notice from our whole discussions today, the question was, is atheism rational? Yeah. And many atheists came on and said, yes, atheism is rational. But none of them gave any evidence for that. And the burden of proof is upon the one who's making the claim. So if you're making the claim that atheism is rational, but you have no reason to believe it is, then it shows you the hollowness, the superficiality, the weak nature of the atheism is rational claim. And so it's sloganeering. People have to see past the slogans. Yeah. If you're an atheist that thinks that, by rejecting your religion, you're a clever person, then you need to think again. Because when you actually have to ask yourself the hard question, is atheism itself rational? And you define rationality in the ways that we said, that which pertains to reason, and reason is that which pertains to either explanation, justification, refutation, logical inference. Then there is no reason, because atheism gives you no explanation, no refutation, no logical inference, and no justification whatsoever. Therefore, atheism cannot be said to be rational.
Absolutely, Hijab. Jazakallah khair for that. And what I absolutely love about this particular live stream, which I've learned, is that the only way an atheist can actually get away with saying atheism is rational is through semantic evasion. They'll never even, I mean, you can see with Stop Spamming, he didn't even want to, he just wanted a definitional way of sort of defending himself rather than putting forward the argument. scdawah@gmail.com. MurdermanX, please email us. We didn't get your email address. We want to invite you to the next show. Everybody who came on, I've got all your emails, and we're going to email you for next week at the same time. Jazakallah khair for joining SC Dawah Live, and make sure you support us on Patreon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.